Hello, everyone. I'm Ari Lax, and this week we're trying a bit of something out. This is a mono green splash reddish tooth and nail deck piloted by uh, Uegjo. Uegjo is how they spell their screen name. But they finished 7-2 in last weekend's Magic Online Championship Series, uh, not quarterly, monthly event. And they've been playing this deck a lot online. I recognize their screen name from looking at results, prepping for the Pro Tour, and I put a little bit of time into this deck then. And it's there's this kind of issue I have where decks like this are things that I always underestimate because I always play like these silly hyperlinear decks where it's just like, oh, you just died to infect on turn 3. What do you want? And you're just like, this deck, isn't going to stand up to that. Sure, but what if your opponent is trying to interact with you bolts or all sorts of stuff? Well, wait, there's no bolts. What if they're, interacting with infect in different ways that aren't good against this deck right now? Just looking at the results of this deck, it kind of has been sneaking through, um, which is interesting considering it's got to be such a low percentage of the metagame. And the fact that it was putting up results before Eldrazi and now during um, makes it kind of promising for the future. So to break it down, the general idea of the deck is that you are ramping to cast big green stuff, namely Tooth and Nail. The big interaction is that you have Utopia Sprawl and Overgrowth, so that a single land taps for more than 1 mana. And then you use Voyaging Satyr, Arbor Elf, Garruk, um, Nissa to untap that land over and over and tap it for mana. You also have Nykthos, another land that you can untap with Voyaging Satyr and Garruk. Again, you're just trying to generate absurd amounts of mana very fast. I've been tooth nailed on turn 3 out of this deck. Trying to remember how that happened. It was like Arbor Elf on 1, Sprawl, tap land for 2, untap the land with the elf, Garruk, untap the 2 lands, play Overgrowth, and it was just like a million mana on turn 3, and I died. Um, so once you've made all this mana, I mean, Garruk is a threat, technically, Nissa is a threat, but you do have whammies to actually kill them with. So Primal Command is 1. Uh, so what you can do with Primal Command against people is you can gain 7 life if they're an aggressive deck that can't deal with that. You can put their lands on top of their deck, and then use the second mode to search for an Eternal Witness, and just do it over and over again until you reach the point where you've established enough control that your Primal Command can find a big whammy and kill them. Harmonize gets you deeper to whatever threat you need, but Tooth and Nail just straight up kills them. That finds Emrakul the Aeon's Torn and Xenagos, God of Revels, puts them both into play. You give Emrakul plus 15 plus 15 and haste, and then you attack them and they sacrifice 6 permanents and then die. Um, Depending on what's going on, maybe Emrakul's not enough. You can Acidic Slime their Ensnaring Bridge. You can Hornet Queen to spam the board if you need to. If they have, like against Affinity maybe, they have a Flying Chump blocker to block the Emrakul, can sack 6 permanents, then kill you on the swing back. You can get Eternal Witness if you're somehow worried that Emrakul would be stopped for a turn and then killed. I don't really know how that happens, but it could. Um, you can Eternal Witness the Tooth and Nail and get something else and just keep looping. There's a Scavenging Ooze that's more of a Primal Command target against graveyard decks. Primeval Titan to get Kessig Wolf Run, again, a bit more of a command card. But the interesting part is that, this and not so much that, but those two, some of the other stuff is actually, they're just payoff spells too. You can just cast Primeval Titan and kill them with that, or cast a Hornet Queen. Um, Looking at the deck, the thing I'm kind of skeptical about is so many Stomping Grounds and so few fetches. Um, but I'm going to try it as is. Moving to the board, we've got a decent anti-aggro package where you can board out some of the clunkier stuff, presumably like Nissa, like Acidic Slime that you might not need, some of this kind of stuff, and just board into more big hitters, gain a bunch of life, gain more life, kill their creatures. Um, I actually really like this card out of the board of big mana decks. There's spots where Pyroclasm is just the best thing you can do, but Lightning Bolt, while in the Coddle seeing a resurgence, against Burn, you really need to kill their thing on 1. Lightning Bolt's actually just like a very good sideboard card against the decks it's good against. Uh, Looking on, you've got Choke, just big things, crumble to dust. You'll note there's not like, there's a Blood Moon against Eldrazi, but not a ton. You're trying to go over them, not really trying to interact with them at all, which has been reasonably successful for other decks. A bunch of different affinity hate. Presumably that matchup's kind of sketchy. That you can power through them. Affinity just kind of has this issue. Every other linear deck in the format is just not as powerful as Affinity is when they're just gold fishing, which is pretty crazy. And then it both saves you to protect your tooth and nail against the big decks. Um, you're just kind of setting up, not just, you do have Primeval Titan to find it, and you can Primal. You're just trying to get into an opening where you can actually find it, at which point you win the game. So, I'm excited to try out this bit of a brew, see how it does. It may not quite be there yet, but if it's got any legs at all, it definitely has a lot of room to be refined, and that's the exciting part, I think.